Hello and welcome to the Coder Academy T1A2 assignment overview by myself, Xander. Jumping right into the design process and decision making, coming into this project, I knew that I wanted overall a kind of minimal and natural color palette and wanted to kind of combine my love of photography, minimalism, and the outdoors into a website that was very much mobile first. Specifically, I knew I wanted on the home screen a background image as one of the photos that I had taken and a call to action button as well. Looking at the site map, it's a very flat website. So we have the homepage, which links to the About, Contact, Experience, and blog pages. On that blog page, there is multiple links to meet the requirements, 5 blog posts specifically, more could be added. The website color palette was something I spent a bit of time with. I wanted to use a mixture of colors to have a nice amount of natural feeling contrast. Jumping into the wireframes, and then we'll compare them to the finalized product. On this homepage, again, I knew I wanted a photo as the background, having a nav bar along the top, and then on the mobile devices, a hamburger menu instead to expand into that navigation bar. The finalized product, I feel, met that brief very well, matching up to those wireframes. The About page, again, following along, all the pages within this website will have the same header and footer, with the content in between changing. I wanted on the larger devices an image on the left-hand side, the text on the right-hand side, and then on the smaller devices, because it's not practical, to have the text above the image below. Looking at the finalized product, again, meeting those expectations. So scrolling down on the left-hand side of the About Me page on the mobile devices will bring up the picture that is shown on the right-hand side here on the desktop page. Moving on to the experience page, I wanted to introduce a bit more color onto the website than what the previous pages had. I wanted to include a kind of background that gave almost the example of a piece of paper on a desk, really separating out this pseudo resume with experience and project information, as well as a photo of myself. And also include a link to my full formalized resume to provide some more information. Looking at the finalized product, again, just making the most of the mobile view versus the increased width of the desktop view. And I think it really kind of nailed that brief of having that separation between the background elements and this pseudo resume element. The blog page, I wanted to experiment more with CSS Grid, as we spent less time learning about it than Flexbox, for example. I wanted to have a really responsive layout that would change and maximize the full width of the desktop designs, becoming smaller on the tablets and smaller again in the column view for the mobile devices. Which again, I think with CSS Grid made this really quite straightforward. Actually, I think was probably the perfect solution for this page. The contact page, again, kind of very simple in keeping with that design language consistently with the About page, for example, just having the picture and my personal contact information. Again, getting to the finalized product. Really just making the most of the negative space on the page to draw you into the center, get you in contact with myself. The final real page of the website was just the specific blog posts themselves, following a pretty general structure of body text, images, and continuing body text. Again, just really making sure that we're using the most of the increased width. I wanted to set a limit on the total width of the text box, just because otherwise you can get unwieldy. I personally use an ultra-wide monitor, so I'm very hyper-aware of the fact that websites can become challenging to use if you let the text spread out to the full width of the monitor being used. The final page, touching on very briefly, was specifically the expanded navigation bar for mobile devices. Again, I wanted to make the full use of the small screen size that these mobile devices offered and have a very minimal and simple navigation bar. Looking at some text components specifically, the first, of course, being the navigation bar, just again highlighting that difference between the horizontal view on the wider displays versus that column view, and reducing all of those background elements to nothing, hiding them behind this white full opacity layer on the mobile devices. The other component, of course, that was consistent across all pages was the footer element, and again, just decreasing that width when needed for mobile devices, spreading it out nice and simply on the larger screens. Continuing along with the other text elements, again, we didn't use CSS Grid as much as Flexbox, so to kind of just push the boundaries of what I knew about it, I wanted to really use it where possible. So on this page, I think realistically it could have been done with Flexbox without any issues, but again, just wanted that more experience using CSS Grid. And difficult to show in a slideshow, but just the typing animation on that home screen, a cute little Easter egg there. Moving on to the graphical components, these tiles for the blog posts are a combination of the image, the title, the author date and name, and some intro text, each linking to their respective pages, and being responsive, shrinking down and expanding as needed. Also looking at this kind of header element here for the resume, inclusive of that kind of intro paragraph, that mission statement with the link to the full resume, and then of course moving that picture around as needed, reducing the text size for the smaller devices. Again, challenging to show here, but the hamburger menu animation and nav menu reveal was something that I spent a lot of time on. I decided to go with the 3 dots, the ellipses instead of a X, just as I felt that it fit the minimal style of the website, and I also didn't want to introduce confusion in comparison to the logo, which is that X being the initial of my name. And then just a cute little Easter egg, playing around with the hover feature with images and looking at desaturation and grayscale, etc. Discussing the ethical issues briefly, from an accessibility perspective, just want to ensure that all HTML tags follow best practices. Not using the breakpoints, for example, and just wrapping them in p tags where applicable. I ensured all the colors and text size met minimum recommendations per the WCAG 2.1, and all images have alt tags. For the pictures, of course, being taken by myself, I don't need to worry about copyright from that perspective, but you could use Unsplash for something similar, and just using places like FontAwesome and Google Fonts for open source resources. For this website, no data is captured from visitors and it's static with no input forms, so there's not a massive privacy concern from that perspective. The challenges and favorite parts are one and the same. I think for me, the 2 things I spent the most time with were the header and the footer. That footer being sticky to the bottom and finding a way to solve that issue regardless of what was on the page, using the Flex Grow feature and wrapping everything inside a overall element. That took a lot of experimenting to get to work properly, and that navigation bar, especially for the mobile devices, that took a lot of iterations working with the toggle checkbox, creating that animation from the empty divs for the hamburger menu, and then also the solution kind of ended up being playing with the Z indexes to ensure that those links, when not shown, weren't clickable, as I was having a weird bug with that. All in all, though, it was a great learning experience, and I'm really looking forward to the next project.